Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link below the episode description.
Valentine's Day spending is projected to hit $27.5 billion this year. That's more than the GDP of nearly 100 countries combined. And here's the wild part. It all started with Hallmark selling cards back in 1913.
Well, that's quite the transformation from simple cards to a multi-billion-dollar industry. What does that say about how we view love and relationships today?
You know, it's fascinating because this massive commercialization has created this intense pressure cooker of expectations. Think about it. We're essentially telling people there's only one right way to celebrate love.
That must be especially challenging for people who are single or in non-traditional relationships.
Exactly right. And here's where it gets interesting. Studies show that nearly 50% of adults report feeling anxious or depressed around Valentine's Day, regardless of their relationship status.
So what you're saying is that this holiday meant to celebrate love is actually making many people feel worse about themselves?
Well, that's precisely the irony. But here's where I think we can flip the script. Instead of getting caught up in the commercial aspects, what if we approached Valentine's Day as an opportunity for self-discovery and personal growth?
That's an intriguing perspective. How would someone even begin to make that shift?
Well, I recently came across this fascinating 3-step self-love ritual that completely transforms the traditional Valentine's Day approach. The first step involves creating what's called a Zen den.
Hold on. What exactly is a Zen den? That sounds rather interesting.
Picture this. It's your own sacred space, even if it's just a tiny corner of your room, decorated with items that bring you peace and comfort. Maybe your favorite blanket, some calming scents, perhaps a journal, and some soft lighting.
That reminds me of the research showing how creating dedicated spaces for mindfulness can significantly reduce cortisol levels, our primary stress hormone.
Precisely. And what's really powerful about this approach is that it's not just about the physical space. It's about creating a tangible reminder to prioritize your emotional well-being.
Well, that makes perfect sense when you consider how environmental cues influence our behavior patterns.
Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. The second step involves specific journaling exercises designed to explore your relationship with love in all its forms.
That sounds like it could be pretty revealing. What kind of questions are we talking about?
Think along the lines of what makes me feel truly loved and how do I show love to myself? But here's the key. It's not just about romantic love. It's about understanding all the different ways we experience and express love.
The psychological implications of that kind of self-reflection must be pretty significant.
Oh, absolutely. Research shows that regular journaling can reduce anxiety by up to 37%. And when combined with self-reflection exercises, it can significantly improve emotional intelligence.
Well, that's fascinating, especially considering how emotional intelligence correlates with relationship satisfaction.
And this leads perfectly into the third step, choosing a meaningful gift for yourself. But here's the twist. It's not about spending money, it's about identifying what truly makes you feel valued and cared for.
That's quite different from the traditional Valentine's Day gift-giving approach.
You know what's really interesting? Studies show that self-gifting actually activates the same pleasure centers in our brain as receiving gifts from others. Sometimes even more so because we're better at choosing exactly what we want.
That makes me think about how this approach could benefit both single people and those in relationships.
Exactly! For couples, it can actually enhance their relationship because when both partners have a strong foundation of self-love, they're less likely to place unrealistic expectations on each other.
Well, that certainly challenges the traditional narrative around Valentine's Day.
And here's another fascinating statistic. Couples who practice individual self-care report 23% higher relationship satisfaction compared to those who don't.
That really underscores the importance of maintaining individual identity within a relationship.
Now, let's talk about practical ways to implement this approach. For instance, understanding your love language can be crucial, whether you're single or partnered.
How does that tie into the self-love ritual?
Well, imagine knowing that your primary love language is acts of service. You might create a self-care routine that involves doing something practical for your future self, like meal prepping or organizing your space.
That's quite clever. It's like becoming your own perfect partner in a way.
Exactly. And research shows that people who actively practice self-love are 60% more likely to maintain healthy boundaries in relationships.
Well, that certainly puts a different spin on the whole "you have to love yourself first" advice.
And here's something really interesting. Neuroscience research shows that practicing self-love activities actually strengthens the same neural pathways that are activated in healthy romantic relationships.
That's quite remarkable. It suggests that self-love isn't just a metaphor, it's a physiological reality.
Now, let's talk about how this applies to different relationship situations. For singles, this approach can transform what might be a difficult day into an opportunity for growth.
That must be particularly relevant considering how many people struggle with being single on Valentine's Day.
The statistics are quite telling. 76% of single people report feeling pressure around Valentine's Day. But those who engage in intentional self-care activities report significantly lower levels of holiday-related stress.
That really highlights the importance of having alternative ways to celebrate.
And for those in relationships, this approach can actually deepen their connection. When both partners practice self-love, they're more likely to approach the holiday from a place of abundance rather than need.
That's quite a paradigm shift from the traditional Valentine's Day narrative.
Looking ahead, I think we're seeing a real transformation in how people approach this holiday. More and more people are creating their own traditions that focus on authentic expressions of love rather than commercial expectations.
Well, that certainly gives us all something to think about as we approach Valentine's Day this year.
And remember, whether you're single, partnered, or somewhere in between, the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. That's not just feel-good advice. It's backed by decades of psychological research.
That's such a powerful note to end on. Any final thoughts?
Well, as we wrap up, I'd encourage everyone to consider how they might create their own meaningful Valentine's Day tradition, one that honors all forms of love, starting with self-love. After all, that's where all healthy love begins.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you have received value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show with your friends and send them a link to the show. 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me by sending me a message using the Send Us a Text link below the episode description.